Hi, welcome back to the new norm. I'm Dr. Lou Graham, and this program is brought to you by Midway Dental and Catapult Education. I've got a great guest today, Todd Erdman, a lawyer who basically specializes 99% of his time in dentistry. I love that. He's actually an associate member of the AGD. I love that. I didn't even know that existed. We'll get back into Todd in a few minutes. So let's just talk about a few current updates. First current update, Yale University just published a study that saliva testing is more accurate than nasal swab testing. We've been talking about this. So again, emphasizing saliva testing. Bellevue Hospital, latest wrap up of a current ongoing, I'd say, research project or study is that they're finding that many asymptomatic patients have lost tremendous lung function without knowing it. And what they're recommending is measuring oxygen saturation. So imagine if we now use as a screening tool, basically we have all these in our practice to measure oxygen saturation, pulse oximetry. We have these in our practice. I see this as a screening tool beyond just taking someone's temperature and the screening questions. All that is ongoing and changing. To the negative side, the Department of Health in New York City said under no circumstance were any professionals supposed to use serologic testing because it has not been proven long-term immunity with IgG and all the what they would call gray market tests that are coming out. So where does this leave us? Indiana is now opening the mandate up, and dentists can go back to work, elective dentistry, if they have the proper PPE. I don't know who could have all the amounts of PPE at this point because they've been going to the hospitals and dentists have been just struggling to get some to do emergency care. So I throw big caution up in the winds right now as we're opening our doors and rushing into elective dentistry. Not fear-mongering, just thinking, let's be cautious. Let's go kind of slowly into this. What are your protocols in Indiana that you're setting up to go back to work? What do you do if the guy next to you is marketing air filtration and all these other things? I mean, I think we should be cohesively going back to work together in an organized, safe mode. Okay, that's my rant and rave for this morning. Let's talk more about Todd. Todd, and I'm going to even read his wonderful bio. So he's been in practice really in his solo practice with really almost exclusively directing towards dentistry and their issues. I'm definitely going to become a client after reading his bio and going on his website. He is focused on dentistry. And what's also really interested, he's also not beyond just helping dentists do startups. He's not just interested in the purchase of a practice or selling of a practice. He also deals with associate contracts. And that's something I really never got into, and I should have, and I would advise everybody, of course, to do that. He also assists young doctors in reviewing associate contracts and helps practices hire associates. I love this. I love all of that. What don't I love about this guy? Well, first off, as a Chicago Bear fan, this is personal. He's a Kansas City Chief fan, born and raised in Kansas City. And if we all know the story about the draft a few years ago, we passed on Pat Mahomes, and you know the story. So that's the first reason I really don't love this guy. Why do I love this guy? He loves tequila. And as a guy who had a couple of Cadillacs last night with great tequila, I totally changed my opinion on him immediately when he talked about tequila. So with that as the lead-in to my buddy Todd, who I've not met before today, I want to go into the first question. Todd, business interruption insurance. We get fires, we get, tragedies that happen. This is a pandemic. And I have my little story on business interruption insurance, but I'm going to let you start off. I'd love to welcome Todd to the show. Todd, let's go in with business interruption insurance. Talk to me.
Lou, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for what you're doing and sharing information with the community. People need leadership right now, and what you're doing is fabulous. Business interruption insurance is going to be a major litigation avenue for the next several years. I've been talking to a lot of attorneys, and there are a lot of very upset insureds out there right now that have these policies. They've been paying into the system for possibly decades. And they just don't understand why a complete shutdown in the dental industry is not an interruption in their business. The short answer
Right.
is there are exclusions, and a lot of policies are very clear about bacteria. One of the things we're hoping for is because these policies don't mention viruses, perhaps that's going to be a way in. Another thing is some of the states are starting to pass laws that could retroactively force insurance companies to pay claims. Now, they have big lobbies, and they spend a lot of money in Washington to stop that from happening. So it's going to be a point of contention for years to come. So what I'm telling my clients is to look at their policies, talk to their legal counsel about their policies, and even if there is a direct exclusion, even if it's really clear and they feel like, man, I'm just out in the cold here, put in a claim, submit a claim, determine what your average monthly income is. Let's determine what you're going to be losing during this interruption. And let's put in a claim once you get back up in business, because what's the worst thing that can happen is they'll say no.
So, as a lawyer, I'm just going to ask you some pointed questions. The majority of states closed. We were mandated to only see emergency dental patients. Mandated. In Illinois, it was March 20th. Governor Pritzker mandated it, and I agree with him 100%, what he did. So when I contacted our CNA business interruption insurance company, I said, okay, we looked at our policy, but we were mandated to close. And I will tell you, they've been open. Now, I haven't gotten a claim check yet, and I'd be happy to tell you when I do. But the fact that we were mandated to close, what does that say? What does that say, Todd?
To me, it's a strong case that this is a true interruption. It is a true catastrophe that's beyond anyone's reasonable expectation. It really falls into the whole point of business interruption. And it is a catastrophe. It is like an earthquake that no one saw coming. We wish everyone had seen it more coming, and we don't want to get political here, but in general, we wish this would not have happened. So the only other issue is if they are held accountable, will insurance companies exist? Will we drain them of all their funds? Will the government end up having to bail them out to pay the money? But instead of getting too ahead of myself, my way of looking at it is just like if something happened at your home and you had a loss, you put in a claim and you hope for the best. I'd rather my clients have those claims in. So if the litigation is successful or if claims start getting paid, I'd like them to be towards the top of the list.
Okay, and Todd, per the advice that I've gotten from my Catapult guys, and we're collectively doing this, I see a broad action or a class action lawsuit. And I don't really don't take this wrong, I don't really like to deal with lawyers for the most part. My life is more simple without, I'm not on your case at all.
Not at all.
But in this case, I've been advised that we should at least have in writing that we have been denied, if you are denied, that you have been denied, such that if there is a class action lawsuit, you have this in writing. Would you agree to that or
100%.
disagree with that?
100%. And
okay.
Because you really can't lose. You can lose, but if you put in the claim and they say yes, you get paid. If you put in the claim and they decline it, then you have that in writing and you can join a class when that time comes, if it comes.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm not trying to look for millions of dollars like a lot of these publicly traded companies got. I just want to have some give back for all the money I've paid into for business interruption. And this is classic business interruption. It just happens to be in a pandemic.
Yep.
So,
100% agree.
I won't. Okay.
And by the way,
so
I did speak with an insurance,
yeah.
A well-respected insurance person that works for a major company. And he asked me not to mention his name for obvious reasons, but he did say, put in the claim. And so I have a lot of respect for that individual for stepping up and saying that. So absolutely.
I'm with you. And look, I was working with CNA and they were very reputable yesterday and very open to, and the guy said it's a legitimate claim. So that's how I look at it. So the first takeaway is you need a written denial, because if there's a class action and every office is entitled to X, just get that written. I would just get it in writing. Okay, that's our first takeaway from Todd. Okay, Todd. Second question is expenses, disaster clauses. We've all got expenses. We've all got things going on as far as office expenses. So there are some things about disaster clauses, act of God things, and leases. Can you kind of guide us through from the legal word to my world in our words? What should we be looking at?
So nearly every lease that's out there that I've worked with the last 22
Yep.
years has a provision called force majeure. And what that is a fancy way of saying something really goes wrong. The point of those, unfortunately, are really to benefit the landlord most often. And what it says is in the event of a catastrophe, certain obligations of the landlord will be excused. So if there is a sign that's broken and we're in the middle of a pandemic, you can't
Yep.
sue, and get after your landlord because he can't fix the sign right away. One of the things that I've tried to do, and most attorneys do as well, is try to get the tenant some relief as well. So if the tenant
Right.
can't do something and there's a catastrophe, they can't be held in the fault. The problem is, most of the time, it does not allow for you to stop paying rent. When I say most of the time, 99.9% of the time.
Okay.
Because landlords don't like to see their only income stream shut off for any reason whatsoever. So what I will say is everyone should look at their lease, talk to their attorney, and ask for what their situation is. If they fall within that very large group that unfortunately probably won't get relief from a force majeure clause, then I recommend contacting your landlord, telling them what's going on, although if they don't, they've been under some kind of a heavy rock. And,
Exactly.
and just say, I want to pay my rent. I've been paying my rent. Can we take a month, take 2 months, and push it down the road and let me pay it down the road? Or divide it up by 12 and add it to next year's rent. I've been a good tenant. I want to remain a good tenant, but the only way I can is if I could be open for business. And if I'm paying rent for an office I can't use, that's really going to hurt
Right.
me.
And Todd, honestly, yesterday, Joe Rossi, who we had on the program, was kind of saying the same things. Talk to your landlord. They should understand what's going on. Either back end your lease for a couple extra months, pay then, or defer whatever you can't pay now over 2021 in 12 payments or whatever. And I think that's a fair. I'm not asking for free rent. I would, but I won't get it. But I think it would be nice as long as these landlords really kind of come back and understand this is the position we're in. Our businesses have been basically closed down. Okay. So, Todd, I got to go back to now this is my headache in life. Okay, PPP loans.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this. So back in the day, my big concern was I'd furloughed everybody. I had no idea when I was going to come back to work. And the clause I thought said I'd have to bring them back to work, and then they'd be working, everybody would come back to work for 8 weeks at least. Or, it's immediately, you had to do this, and boom, they're back at work. And my worry was if I'm not back at work, what am I going to do? I'm going to pay them for 8 weeks, and then they got to go back to unemployment. Now the government has put in more money. I just reapplied. What should we be doing? I mean, just guide us on what we should be doing. Nolan Yaldo was great. Loved his advice. I want to hear from you. What should we be doing now?
And I did watch his presentation, and it was excellent advice. And he was in early when things were really crazy, and it's still crazy.
He was.
He did a fabulous job, and his presentation aged very well. The first thing I will say is take the money. I've had many clients who waited. They were getting advice to wait. They regret it now.
Yep. I do too.
Take the money if you can. It's the second. From what I'm hearing, they're lending billions a day, every day. This next round will probably last about a week. So if you're watching this now and your application is in, you have a shot at getting funds for the second round.
Yep.
If it's not yet, get it in as soon as you can. Because there may be a third round. This is an election year. So when you have all these small businesses that are left in the cold, when you're reading stories about these restaurants that are getting $20 million while all of our small businesses are getting zero, hopefully there will be a third round. But my main guidance is get the money. Everyone's very worried about the 8 weeks. I completely understand that. The Organized Dentistry Coalition and other groups are pressing Washington to have flexibility with respect to the 8 weeks and when it would start. What would make sense is let's not start from when the funds are available. Let's start from when we reopen for business.
So Todd, I got to ask you this 8-week thing. Okay, so let's just say Potbelly's gets money, or these restaurant chains like Ruth Chris's gets this money. They don't know when they're going to reopen with all their employees. They don't know if it's 8 weeks. So then, I mean, I don't understand how they pulled this 8-week clause, and how can we be? How could they put that restriction in? And for those people like me who waited, probably ignorantly, thinking, otherwise I have to pay back the loan, and obviously I'd love it to be forgiven.
Of course.
You really think that those companies are all going to be operating in 8 weeks full steam ahead? I don't get it, Todd.
I had the same thought, and this is what I came up with, just one man's opinion. They look at this as a 1% interest loan that they can't get otherwise.
Yes.
They look at it as 6 months deferral of payment. They look at it as a 2-year maturity date. It's the best line of credit a business has ever had in the history of the earth. So they don't care about whether or not they get people back in 8 weeks. They don't even, they may not even care about how they use the money. All of us have to use 75% of it towards payroll. 25% of it can be used towards utilities and interest and rent. We're worried about complying with all those things, while they may just be getting it just to put the cash in the bank. So I'm really hopeful that Washington will hear what we're saying and are pleased to have flexibility and not hold us to that date. The other thing, Lou, is we have to be back to our pre-crisis level of employment in terms of having people in our office by June 30th.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen. I sincerely...
It's not.
And so if it doesn't, now we've got 2 strikes against us. We haven't, we weren't able to pay our wages within the 8-week period, and now we don't get back to our pre-crisis level. So I think something's got to give, or the forgiveness just isn't going to happen. What I will say is, though, someone once told me, if someone offers you money, you take it. So take the money. Worst case is you have the best line of credit in the history of the world, and you'll pay it back within the next 2 years. Best case scenario,
right, at 1%.
Exactly, 1%. I mean, the math is easy to do, right? It's crazy. And then best case scenario is Washington figures it out, they fix it, and you'll still be able to benefit from the forgiveness.
Okay, so everybody out there, if you haven't filed it, you tell your team member, your front office, or your office manager, you got to file that today. Yep. I mean, I did this week, and I regret round 1. Do it today. Okay.
And real quick, Lou, I mean to interrupt you, but one thing I've experienced is the more human beings involved, the better shot you had getting the loan. I've talked to people that went with certain large banks that only let things happen online. There was no human interaction. They are still waiting from the first round. Then I've talked to other doctors that are at mid-sized banks that have human beings that they can speak with, and they're teed up to probably get funded. So this might change the way people bank in the future, because the mid-sized banks that you can actually talk to a person seem to be more efficient.
Right. And I'm going to tell you, you're right. I'm a big bank. I use a big bank. They told me that they just couldn't. I went to a small bank and got it processed so easily. It is really important. If you're dealing with a big bank and they say no, go find a small bank who will do it.
Do you want me to say one name or leave it out? I mean, I have one that's sort of...
Say it.
PayPal.
Say it.
PayPal has a program where you can get a PPP loan. They just started taking applications around April 11th. So you have an opportunity, instead of you being the guy that's on the 15th of April when everyone else started on the 3rd, you're seeing the line isn't quite as long there. So if you're desperate, if you're at a major, massive bank and no other bank will take your application because you don't have an existing relationship, PayPal and QuickBooks are both opportunities to get that loan.
Do it. I'm telling you, everybody do it. Okay. Staff member gets the virus. They get sick. Talk to me. You're the lawyer. Talk to me. What do we do?
So the laws are changing on this on a daily basis, and that's why I've got notes. But the CARES Act, part of the CARES Act that not everyone's talking about, was that they passed legislation that are going to protect employees if they get sick. The FFCRA is what it's called. And what that says is it's basically 2 components. One is a paid time off, which is for 2 weeks if someone gets sick with COVID.
Right.
The second is a 10-week paid time off, which is partially prepaid if you have to take care of a child or a child doesn't have daycare.
Right.
Now, healthcare providers are excluded from this law, And according to all of the,
Wow.
all the
Wow, I
reputable,
didn't know that.
healthcare
Okay.
providers. Now, all the reputable law firms I've talked to that do labor and employment have said that dentists do fall under that. Now, I know it'd be crazy to think they don't, but in the law, it's all about what's on paper. But they're all saying that dentists do apply. So what does that mean? What it means by law.
What does that mean?
It means you may not have to pay this paid time off to your staff if they get sick. Now, there are ethical obligations we have to consider, though, and we have to think about,
Right.
What happens with morale if someone gets sick and you cut them off. So what I'm telling folks is consider doing 2 weeks off, even if it doesn't apply to you. But when it comes to the 10 weeks, I get it. I mean, we still have to run a business, and you're still going to have someone perform those functions that they may not be able to perform for a long time. So I'm saying consider doing the 2 weeks as a gesture of good faith. But when it comes to the 10 weeks, you may have to make other arrangements. They may have to go on unemployment if they're going to have to take an extended time off where they can't work.
Got it. You know what, Todd? I got a lot more questions for you. So this is what I want to do. Most of our attendees, they just love these 20-minute, new norms. I'm going to bring you back. I want to talk to you. I want to start talking more about the virus. What are the responsibilities, next steps, and everything like that. So I'm going to bring you back. This is the new norm. Dr. Lou Graham, stay safe, be smart. So let me be clear. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. So what we want you to do is we want you to go to education@midwaydental.com. Shoot us your questions. We'll go right to the experts. I know I'm not the expert, so let's go ask the experts what we should be doing as our next step next week, the week after, and thereafter. I look forward to hearing from you.